Now we welcome our panel of MMA experts to the Fight Day set to talk about some hot-button issues in the news. First, the controversial and sudden release of UFC fighter Nate Marquardt from the organization, the continued struggle to bring MMA to New York, and the main event of UFC 135, Rampage Jackson versus John Jones. Here to discuss these topics is our expert Fight Day panel. Matt Brown, the editor-in-chief of HeavyMMA.com, as always. Great to have you on the show. Kevin Iole, writer for YahooSports.com. Kevin, welcome back.
Thanks.
And Ben Fowlkes, writer for MMAfighting.com. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
So here we go. Let's jump right into it. Nate Marquardt, suddenly released from the UFC. Some people are saying there's still a piece missing. But, Matt, what's the first thing that you thought when you heard that Nate Marquardt was cut?
Well, the language that Dana used, I thought it was going to be something really, really bad. I thought it was going to be, he tried to fake a blood sample or something, or something along the lines of, faking some sort of test or faking some paperwork or whatever it might have been. And then when it came out that it was just the testosterone replacement stuff, and somewhere along the way I kind of was like, maybe they're still waiting for the other shoe to drop or something. I just felt like maybe there was more to the story.
Kevin?
I think there's more to the story, and I don't think it was just testosterone replacement therapy. I think this was really bad. I mean, I think it's a blatant attempt to cheat. Can I prove that in a court of law? No. But if you look at it, this is a guy who tested positive before. His numbers were elevated. The normal numbers, he was way out of the range. When you're taking testosterone replacement therapy for hypogonadism, which Nate supposedly has, you have to be in the range. He was way elevated, which is why in New Jersey put him on suspension. When he came off of that, then it turned out that he was still coming down very low. So he had just gotten into the normal range. Pennsylvania was rightly concerned about that. If it was either a mistake by his doctor or an attempt to cheat, and I think in either case, you can't allow him to fight.
Now, Ben, I read a great piece that you did on MMAfighting.com. That you said something along the lines of it didn't really have so much to do with the severity of his cheating, but perhaps something else messing with the UFC's business.
Well, it definitely did seem, when you see the different reactions that they've had to, Chael Sonnen's incident, for instance, where that comes out after the fight, and this one came out before the fight, pretty much ruined the main event. I mean, it seems like that definitely had an impact on the UFC's harsh reaction to it. I mean, whether or not it was a blatant attempt to cheat, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me if you really are trying to cheat and you think of it as cheating, then you don't go through all that paperwork. You don't leave such a trail that this is what you're doing. I mean, I think he thought that what he was doing was fair, and he just went about it the wrong way.
Kevin, do you think we'll ever see him back in the UFC, or he's done?
I think he's done. I really don't see him back in the UFC. I think Dana is so angry about it that I don't see him coming back. And I think the difference in this case, where he's different than Chael Sonnen, is Chael Sonnen's was a failure to report. Now, there's a whole slew of issues that come up with Chael Sonnen, but Chael Sonnen's issue was a failure to report. He didn't go to George Dodd until the day before in the California Athletic Commission. I think that's what the issue is here. Nate was giving overly high numbers, and long out, 6 weeks out before the fight, according to Greg Serb. That was a big issue.
Mixed martial arts in New York, is it actually dead? That's the next topic that we want to talk about today. It's stated in many articles, $40 million is what the UFC brought to Toronto. And people that are based in New York, like Herman Farrell, the chair of the Way and Means Committee, is saying things, and I quote, "I don't think very much of the sport. Next we'll give them clubs with spikes on the end of it. That will be good," end quote. Is this really such a blatant example of people being uneducated, or is this just dirty politics? Ben, you're first.
I mean, it's not so different from what the UFC has faced before and trying to break into other new markets. It's just that it's on a much larger scale since it's New York and everything is a media spotlight there. I mean, they're just going to keep at it, and eventually they're going to get there. I don't think there's anybody who legitimately believes that, 10, 20 years from now, there's still going to be no MMA in New York. That's ludicrous.
It just seems ludicrous to me that there's still guys like this that are making these statements. Kevin, are you shocked, or do you think that it's still going to be a long road until the UFC happens in New York?
Dave, I think it's going to be a long road, but I'm talking 3 to 5 years being a long road. I think it's going to happen. I agree 100% with Ben that there's too much money and it just makes too much sense for it not to happen. But I remember being in Germany before UFC 99, and there was one newspaper that wrote, "The rules of the UFC allow fighters to fight until the death." Right. And that was just in that was 2009, and I don't think Germany is some backward country. So it just shows you the ridiculous nature, and I think it's politicized heavily. Eventually, it's going to pass.
The thing that kind of gets to me, I think the most is that boxing's legal. You can have jiu-jitsu tournaments. You can have Muay Thai matches. So all the parts that equal MMA are all legal separately, but not together. Like when you put them together, then it becomes like this crazy sport that no one can.
I mean, if you look at any given year schedule at Madison Square Garden, you've got rodeo, you've got pro wrestling, you got all kinds of things going down there, and MMA, sanctioned everywhere else. You can't do it. It's absurd.
And how many concussions do these guys get in football in New York and hockey in New York, and they come back and play? And if you get a concussion in MMA, which obviously are very rare, guys don't get them that much, they're out for 6 months or something. So I think obviously it's a far safer sport, and it's just politics in New York.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. John Jones versus Rampage Jackson, the main event of UFC 135. That's happening in September in Denver. Is this the fight that you wanted to see? And if not, who? Matt, you're first.
No, it's not the fight I wanted to see. I wanted to see John Jones and Rashad Evans. I think everybody wants to see Rashad Evans and John Jones. Dana was really excited about this, getting the teammates to fight. That's all the stuff that went on Twitter, them talking back and forth, all the smack talk and everything. And then it came down to the timing wasn't right, and we're going to rejigger this and whatever. I look at it from the standpoint that Rashad Evans did what he needed to do to get that title shot. He went out there and he beat Rampage Jackson. Why, timing-wise, there needs to be a pecking order, right? There's got to be a pecking order.
Well, and you lose all the heat that you built up between John Jones and Rashad Evans. And that, I think, is the big loss there, that this was the time to make that fight with them going back and forth with each other like that. And I think, I think you're right, that Rashad had earned the right to fight for the title. Rampage Jackson, a little less so, and I'm just not terribly excited about that.
I think John Jones is going to walk right through it. I don't even think it's going to be a contest.
I think so, too. What I find interesting about this, though, is that the timing seemed off, and that's the reason why Rashad had to accept this fight with Phil Davis. But then their fights are only happening about 6 weeks apart. Some conspiracy theorists say that John Jones, his hand suddenly got better or whatever, and then he's able to fight in September. Some people still say that John Jones seemingly is ducking Rashad Evans. Do you believe any of that talk, Kevin?
No way. I don't think John Jones, I think he would relish that fight. I think he'd love to get that fight, get his hands on Rashad Evans, as I believe Rashad would love to get his hands on John Jones. I think it was a situation where it was circumstances. The timing didn't work. When it looked like John couldn't fight, they put Rashad and Phil Davis together. Now you have a main event. If you put Rashad back to where John Jones was, now all of a sudden it's a situation where you don't have a main event for Philadelphia, you're on short notice. And so I think that the UFC made the right decision, even though I don't like the fact that Rampage is getting the fight. I don't think Rampage really has earned it. He hasn't looked very good. I thought, he loses and it doesn't look great to Rashad, comes back and just looks, so-so in his last outing against Matt Hamill. He looked very heavy when we saw him last week in Pittsburgh after the Czech Congo fight. Is he going to be able to get in shape in time? To me, I think the fight would have been Rashad Evans, but it was just timing.
If not Rampage or Rashad, though, who?
I don't know. That's a good question. Machida after one win, I don't know. The thing to me, I guess, that bothers me too is this Philadelphia fight is like, what does it mean for these guys? If Rashad wins, does he definitely get the next shot? And what about Phil Davis? Should he pull the upset? Now, does he move in line, or is it like you beat the guy who was supposed to get the shot, but then now since you beat the guy, you still don't get the shot? It's like, what does that fight mean?
Well, UFC has luxury of time, and that's the good thing that they have. They can watch that fight. They can say, hey, how did Phil Davis look? If Phil wins, they can judge how he looked. If he struggles through a kind of a boring fight, they're going to say, maybe we don't want to put him against John Jones. But if he looks dynamic, they can bring him in to Denver to sit cage side for the next fight. And, hey, he's going to fight the winner, and I think that'll make a big difference.